Hello, this video is a continuation from the previous video, so if you haven't watched that one, I would suggest going back and watching that one first, and then continuing on to this one. In the last one, we set up a simple design view for the form, and also a simple way to interact with the database, which has a few new tables now. So we've got a total of 3 tables, one for classes, one for students, and one for the teachers. So now, in this video, we're going to try and link all that together and actually have something that starts to work now. So I'm not sure, this might be a bit of a longer one, but we'll see by the end of it. So now we've got it with some data in here, we can now start looking at how to actually implement this data in. So first, I'm going to put together a button to go in here so we can have a series of actual students that you can look down a list of. So I'm quickly going to put this together in a user form. So if I just make a new user form, or user control here, and we're just going to call this student, and let's make it look like this maybe. And I'm quickly going to put together a design for this. It doesn't have to be fancy, just a label or two, and we can then look at how to interact with that. Now I've put together a quick little button which the user will be able to interact with for each of the students. We can now look at, there's one of two ways of doing this. So we can either have the labels here being public, or we can have it so that there's variables that you update inside the code and the labels get updated on an update method. So I think for now I'm going to do the latter of those two options and have these as private labels, and let's give this name label, and we can just make that look a little bit nicer, and also we can do info label. So now if we go into the code for the button, we can have a few public variables. So let's have public name, the string, it's going to be name, and just have that to blank for now, and public string of info, have that blank for now, and then let's do a public void and just have this as a update method. And what this will do is we'll do name label.text equals name, and the info label.text equals info. So all we're doing is setting the text of the name and the info labels to the information provided. So this will stay inside the actual instance of that button. So the reason I'm doing it this way is more for security in a sense, as these are still private variables, or sorry, private labels, and we're just changing the variables themselves, and then we're calling on an update method which updates that information. So we'll want to now go into our main bit here, and let's move this all along a bit. There we go. So now if we go to our main code, and I'd say the first thing we want to do is test this out, and let's go ahead and do student info, students panel dot controls dot add, and what that's doing is it's adding something, and in this case we want to add a new instance of a student, and let's call this student equals a new student. There we go, so we're making a new instance of a student. Let's do student dot name equals, and we're just going to put it for something random at the moment. We're not going to get it from the database, as all we're doing at the moment is testing this works. So let's have Clara Ray. So a completely random one. Student info. Let's do as age 18 maybe, and class. Actually, no, we don't need that at the moment. We can just have the age for now because we can add more information at another point. And then just add student, and let's just put this in its own little bit here. And now if we go to the main form and delete that, and now let's run it, and this should, there we go, and we've got to call the update method. There we go. Realizing I didn't do student.update. There we go. And I didn't set that to a private, did I? No. So now we see we've got Clara, Ray, age 18. And that is in the list now here. So let's close this. Okay. And now we can let's run that again. Just have a look. It looks like that needs to be shifted over a little bit on the bottom because they're not lined up. There we go. That should be a bit better. Let's try this now. That's a bit better. There we go. So now you see that's a bit more lined up. And now we can do a way to actually start adding these. So let's comment this out for now. I'm leaving the information still here, just commented out, so you can easily just grab these bits while I'm doing these bits, or you can grab that code and use that as you're following along here. So first of all, let's make a new method, just a void, and we're going to call this update students. So this will update the list of students that's there. So first we're going to do we need to make an instance of a server. In this case, I'm just going to move the instance of the server outside into the class. And now we can just access that from anywhere. So we only have to establish it once. So let's do server dot, and when you're doing this, make sure you do the server dot connect up here at the start, and make sure you don't do server dot connect after you're doing the update student method. Otherwise, it will continuously and endlessly try and, because if we go to the SQL server, it will continuously just say failed to write data, or if you try to do it again and again. Because one thing you can do is, instead of doing a message box that shows failed to write data, you can instead have it retry. So you could have it establish a connection and then try again, which is good, except for when you actually encounter an error and then it continuously tries and fails. So that's why at the moment I'm just doing message boxes. So you want to establish a connection first, and then you could do maybe update students down here. So for this update students method, we're going to actually make a string array. I'm going to make it a 2D array. I'm going to have this as data. I'm going to equal that to server.read data, and then I'm going to do server.database. And we want to do the students table. So let's do students. If it was called students, let's check. It was called students, yep. And then we want to do the columns that we want to read. So let's grab something similar up here. So just a small little array. And let's do the ID, the full name, and the class ID. And then what else does it want? It wants the where, and we don't want that, so let's do false. And then we can do just null or blank in a sense. And because with students, we want, sorry, the column names in here. So columns, and then we want false, and then blank and blank, or null and null. So that will read the data and store it to there, to the data array that we've got. And then let's iterate through the data array. Okay, so let's get the length of it and iterate through it. And let's do a very similar method to up here. But let's move that out of that and make a new method down here. Or we can do it up here actually. And just do a private void add student. Okay, and now we can do a string array and have data, and then we can do a integer of index. Okay, so now we want to do add student, and again you can do this slightly differently to how I'm doing it, but I'm just putting this together so it should hopefully all work. So data and I. So what we're doing is we're putting the variables of the data to the array and the integer of I, so the index we're on at the moment, into the add student array, or the add student method, sorry. And then we can change the student name to data to the I, comma, sorry, the index, comma, we can do this as I actually, just to keep things nice and simple. I, comma, and then we want to look at what data we want to go in there. So we see on the columns we have ID as the first one, full name as the second index, and class ID as the third. So we want the full name, so we'll do to the 1, since it starts at 0, of course. So ID would be 0, full name would be 1, class ID would be 2. So now for the age, we don't actually have a bit of data to store there at the moment. So we can add that at another point. So let's add that now, actually. Let's go into the student, and right-click this, go design, and let's do age. And have that as an integer, and move that up next to the full name. Save this. Close that. Reopen students. View the top 1,000 rows. And there we go. So now let's remove the two students we have at the moment. So we have James Markson and Iris Watson. So let's remove for ID 1 and IDs 2. So let's get this server.delete, as we've already used it before. If you don't still have this, you can just do this now. And let's delete 1, and then let's copy that. And also delete ID of 2, and we can put 2 new students in there instead. There we go. So now it should have deleted them, as we need to add new information. There we go. So now let's add 2 new students, and we have all the updated columns as well. So we have the ID, full name, age, class 1 ID, class 2 ID, and class 3 ID. And let's just do Control-Shift-R to refresh this. And it should, there we go. So now, let's do ID, full name. There we go. Full name, we then want to do the age. And then we want class 1 ID. Let's have another look at this. Yep, so we want class 1 ID, class 2 ID, and class 3 ID. Actually, we can just copy this and change this to 3 and change this one to 2. So now we want the ID of 1. So let's start with that. So we're gonna, we'll start with 0. So we'll have the first student with the full name Iris Watson again. Age 17. Class ID 1. Let's have her doing computer science. And see what's... Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's have her doing computer science, and then also physics and maths. So she does all three of those subjects. Again, you'd probably have a database with a lot more subjects, but for now this is all we've got, so we're just going to rearrange the order of them. So she's doing computer science, maths and physics, and if we go back to the database and have a look at the subjects, we can see you've got computer science, physics and maths. Maths is at an ID of 2, physics is at an ID of 1, computer science is at an ID of 0. Okay, so now let's get rid of that delete method as well. So let's add her first. There we go. Looks like it did it successfully. And let's double check. Oh, it doesn't look like it did. Oh, because we didn't actually write the data. That would help. There we go. Let's run this again. And now let's check. And we should get... There we go. Iris Watson, age 17, class ID of 0 for their first class, second class, and then third class. Okay. And now let's add a second student. Let's do Jonathan West, age 19, with, let's say, maths, physics and computer science, but in a different order. So maybe he has different timetable days. And let's run this again. And double check. And there we go, we have Jonathan West, and that's in ID of 0. Oh, that's meant to be ID of 1. So let's change that to an ID of 1. And let's rewrite the data. That was a slight mess up on my part. So let's do it where full name is equal to Jonathan West. And we want to change, we can just change all of that. There we go. And let's double check. Should be, there we go, an ID of 1. So that's fixed now. So now let's look at actually reading this data. So let's first start with this update students method again. So their age is now in here. So let's read their ID, full name, and then we want class 1 ID. We also want to put in here age, and then we want to copy that. Do class 2 ID and class 3 ID. So class 2 ID, class 3 ID. There we go. And now if we look at this, we've got 0, 1, 2. So index 2 is their age, and we're putting the whole database in here. So we can also get rid of that. So now let's change this age 18 here to instead data to the I, 2. And then let's make it so it doesn't just say that. No, let's do it so it says that. There we go. So then we can have it, once we've set up the classes better, we can have it so it also reads their classes that they're doing and tells you that. So let's first try this and see if it works. Probably we'll have to do some changes. Okay, so we've got Iris Watson and Jonathan West, and then these are all blank at the moment, which isn't what we want, so we can fix that quickly. We haven't got a method to check for that. Also, it's frozen my mouse for some reason. There we go. So let's quickly make a fix for that and do an if statement. So let's do if data to the I, 0 is not equal to null. There we go. So if there's actually some data there, it will run. There we go. So that works much better now. So now we have Iris Watson and Jonathan West, age 17 and age 19. So let's make this look a bit neater now as well. So let's grab this and instead do it in here, semicolon at the end, and just have age. And now you can see it's much easier to make changes now to all this, and it will affect all the buttons. So we've got Iris Watson, age 17, Jonathan West, age 19, and of course if we wanted we could have their classes listed here. At the moment, when you click on them, nothing happens, so I'll save that for the next video. So in the next video we're going to cover actually clicking on the buttons and having events happen, and then having it read from the database for specific events and what it should read and how different things should interact with each other. And then after that we can talk about writing to the database and rewriting from this position, maybe from an administrator account. So that's going to be it for this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.